sleep, bet, repeat. That's how we get down on the opening line at EliteSportsBetting.com. I'll be your host, Benny Ricciardi, and today we're going to be talking a little bit of EPL soccer action. Although I shouldn't say EPL soccer action because this weekend there is no EPL soccer action. But I would bring in my man Duke because they do have the FA Cup going on. Now, again, many of our listeners, many of our followers are over here in the States. Some of them may not be big soccer guys, Duke. So let's start by explaining why and what the FA Cup is in the middle of a soccer season. So let's start there.
Yeah, first of all, Happy New Year to you, Benny. Good to see you, bud. I appreciate, by the way, I heard I got eaten by a shark reference. That was freaking hilarious. I was dying laughing when I lost my connection. And you know what? I'm still a nerd with these headphones. I actually got one of these babies, professional ear setup, but the damn cord's like 2 inches long, so it doesn't help me very much. Have to go back to the drawing board there. But FA Cup, first of all, there's always something to bet on with soccer. We talked about that numerous times. There's no EPL action like Benny mentioned. They're playing in this national tournament, which is actually super cool. Everyone is invited. So you think about, the NBA, the MBD teams or the Gatorade League, whatever it is now, would be included. Some amateur teams would be included.
Yep.
Everyone's included, and they all play these huge qualifier rounds. And so these smaller minnow teams have to get through, 4 or 5 games even to reach the big dogs. But we have true David versus Goliath matchups. We'll have, and it's all a random draw. So you could have Manchester United playing Little Minnow State or something like that, who has a 600-seat stadium and has never seen more than 1,000 people on their ground. And here's this giant of a club coming in to play them. And so that's what this tournament is. You have, especially in the earlier rounds, and we are progressing a little bit, but we're still relatively early, a lot of these bigger sides rotating their teams, using this as a game to get their youth players some experience with the first team under the first manager. So certainly an opportunity where we wait for team news, but a lot of the times they do send their big teams. And we'll talk about a few of these games, and they absolutely hammer these small teams. So you'll see some funky lines like Man City -4, which we're on this week, little preview. They could send their youth squad and probably win 4-0 in this game. So a super exciting tournament and something we're going to bet on. Got 4 plays for you there.
Yeah, so I was looking at the betting package here, and you have some round robin action for the FA Cup this week, and I think it's a good idea for us to kind of explain to people what a round robin bet is. One of the things I want to do with this show in general is kind of not only give people plays, but also kind of explain a little bit about sports betting to them all. So why don't you talk about the round robin play first, and then I'll kind of explain a little bit about what it is for people who don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? You don't know what you don't know. Kind of confusing, but seems simple enough, and not many people put it into use. I don't know what you guys understand as far as terminology from the betting side, especially on the soccer side, where there's a lot of foreign technology or terminology that's involved. So, for example, I try to use words that the books use. So when I say Real Madrid to keep a clean sheet, that means Real Madrid does not concede a goal. But if you look up, Control F concede or Control F shutout, that's not going to pop up on your book. Clean sheet will. So I try to use that terminology in the bet pack to make it easier for you to find these bets. But the other one is round robin, one that I've used quite a lot in my betting career. I'm not saying it's a bit like parlays. It's a bit like a pick 4 where you're not going to hit all of them every single time, but when you do, it should pay off. But it's a way to attack kind of some of these higher juiced options, but to give us some plays. But we didn't know what a round robin was. So, Benny, why don't you explain a little bit how that works?
Yeah, so, basically the idea of a round robin, one of the closest ways you can kind of explain it is, I guess, like if you're looking at horse racing, right? Like if you bet an exacta box, or a trifecta box or something like that. Think about it this way: is what you're really saying is you think these 4 teams are going to win, or was there 4 teams in it or 3 teams in it?
I have 4 today. Yep.
All right, so the 4 teams in the round robin, and what are we doing? A 2x2, 3x3, or?
So we're betting it all ways. So it comes out to 10 bets. So
okay.
Yep.
So here's basically the idea with the round robin. The idea of a round robin is that those are the 4 teams that you're picking to win, and what you're doing is you're putting them together in a whole bunch of different combinations, so that each one of them is covered in a 2x2, a 3x3, and then one big 4x4 with all 4 of them in there. So take it, for example, let's just say we have Team A, Team B, Team C, and Team D are the 4 teams that are in there. The idea of a round robin is you're actually making like we're talking about here, like Duke was saying, you're actually making 10 bets. So there's one bet where you have all 4 of those teams in there. So team A, B, C, and D all need to win for you to cash. And then you're going to have a bunch of bets where 3 of those 4 teams need to win to cash. So it'll be A, B, and D, A, B, and C, A, C, and D. So you'll have 3 bets where 3 of the 4 need to win in order for you to make money. And then you go back down to the bottom and you have, I guess we would have 6 bets left over where team A and B, team A and C, team A and D, team B and C, team B and D, and then team C and D. So really what it is it's 10 separate bets with those 4 teams. So what Duke was saying is, if all 4 of those teams win, you cash all 10 of those bets. Mm-hmm. That's a day where you just make a boatload of money. You wind up, putting in, I don't know, if each one of the bets was $10, you put in $10 on each one of those 10 bets and you walk away with, a couple $100 at the end, maybe even $1,000 total. One of those teams loses, well, now you lost a bunch of those bets that you made. So every one of those bets that we just mentioned, let's say team A loses. Well, you lose the 4x4 because team A won't be in it. You lose 2 of the 3x3s because team A was in 2 of the 3 of them. And then you'll lose 3 of the 2x2s because team A was in 2 of those. But you could still cash the other 3. You could still cash 1 of the 3x3s. And if you do that, you still may wind up making more money than you originally invested with the $100 or so there. Now, if you have 2 or 3 of these teams lose, that's when you wind up not making that much money because, really you're only cashing 1 or 2 bets for, a minimum amount of return at that point. So the idea of the 4x4 is you really want to try to win all 4 of them. Obviously, that's best case scenario. But you also are able to make some money if you can get 3 out of the 4 of them through. What you're really ideally looking for is not to lose 2 of those bets. I think that's probably the best way to explain it. You're picking those 4 teams to win. You're doing it in a whole bunch of different parlay combinations of 2 teams, 3 teams, and 4 teams. And the best case scenario is if you go 4 for 4 and all those teams do actually win.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a perfect explanation, Benny. And the way that I use it is, again, to grab action on teams that I like, but are typically juiced out of a value proposition where I can bet them straight up.
Yep.
And so it's not exactly like mass multi-entering in a GPP, but in theory, if you put $1,000 worth of entries in, you're not going to lose all $1,000, right? Mm-hmm. If you have a good variation within your roster builds, you should get at least some of that money back. That's typically how I play round robins, where we're risking 5 units on 10 bets in this scenario. Mm-hmm. But in theory, if we lose all 4, then obviously we lose all of our bets. But it's more likely than not that we win at least 2, so we'll get some of our money back. And if we hit all 4, like you talked about, we're dancing naked. So, perfectly explained. Like I said, this isn't, I don't do these every weekend. I grab 1 a month maybe where I'm looking for some action and don't want to have a huge outlay just to get back a unit or 2. So it's kind of, it's not something I do for fun, but it's a way to drive action and hopefully drive some profit as well.
Yeah, and for those of you who are out there, this is also a strategy I use a lot in MMA. Mm-hmm. In MMA, when you read in Mad Lab's article and you got a couple of those minus 400 guys that you're pretty sure are going to win, and you want to throw those in, but you also want to kind of juice up some of the returns, you throw in, he likes an underdog that's plus 120, or, there's a fight that's real close where both guys are like minus 105 or minus 110, and you throw in the guy who Mad Lab liked more in there. This way, if those guys hit and you win on the ones that you should win on, the minus 300, the minus 400 favorites, when you start adding in all those together and putting those numbers together, you're getting a lot of returns where you're getting, you're betting $10 and winning 80 or 100. It's another one of those situations. What I like to say is it limits your upside a little, because obviously if you just put the same amount of money, the 5 units on a 4-team parlay, you're going to have a to the ceiling kind of return. Mm-hmm. But if any one of those 4 teams win, you lose your entire 5 units. When you use a round robin like this, if most of those teams win, if you only get maybe 1 loss, or like you said, even if you get 2 losses, you at least get something back. It's a way to limit your risk, but it also limits your reward. So that's the way to look at it, is you're not going to get the $10,000 score by doing it instead of playing a 4-team parlay, but you're also not going to have a $500-600 loss by doing it. You're probably going to get a little bit something back. So that's the trade-off between doing it, and that's why people do it. And that's why we like it for this week. So who are the teams that you're looking at for this FA Cup round robin?
So I like a few of the big boys and one small team. I like Burnley to win. I like City -4. They could win that game 7-0, not even joking. Mm-hmm. I like Cardiff City who was in the Prem last year,
Yep.
big favorite in their home match there. And then I like Aston Villa on the road, who's taking this tournament pretty seriously. To get plus a half a goal is minus 130. So again, if you just say, I don't want to do this round robin thing, I don't mind that bet just straight up. The other ones are juiced up. City is minus 105, I think, for minus 4. So that's kind of our underdog, our way to juice up this round robin.
Mhm.
Burnley's juiced up. Cardiff's juiced up. So not ones I'd recommend betting straight up.
Right.
Once again, why we're in the round robin situation here. But the only worry for Villa is their starting forward did get hurt this past weekend. He's not great anyway, but he is a part of their attack. He's a big target man. I think they can replace him without much drop off there. So they're taking this tournament seriously. I expect a decent side out of them, and they should win regardless.
Yeah, so this is something that we don't talk about all that often, but there's a million different ways to put in bets. And a lot of times when we have an opinion on something, what we really try to do is figure out the best way to play it. I mean, a lot of times I'm doing props last night to just give you guys an example for NBA. Serge Ibaka to get over 10 rebounds was plus 103. Serge Ibaka to get a double-double was plus 106.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the way I was looking at it is that's basically the same thing, right? I mean, we figure he's going to score 10 points. So if we're going to be betting on him to get over 10 rebounds, you take where we're going to get more money from it. And that's the thing is you got to kind of knowing who you want to bet on and knowing what you like is one thing, but also knowing the best way to bet it is something else. I mean, I hear Frank talk about this a lot of times when we do the opening line videos where he might like a team, but he might also like that team because he feels it's going to be a slow down game that kind of benefits them. And, maybe he's better off taking the under than he is taking the actual side on it because, he feels that the game could wind up with the other team covering, but either way, it's still going to be 17-14 and it's a 45-point spread or something like that. So there's a good way to make a bet, and then there's the better way to make a bet. And that's kind of what we try to look for here is we want to take what we think is going to happen and then bet it the way where it gives us the least risk and the best chance for reward. And that's kind of what Duke is talking about here with this round robin. So it is definitely something that if you guys have never done before, it might be good to throw this in, even if just for a little bit of money, so you kind of get an idea of how it works out. And like I said, when Mad Lab's article starts coming out for MMA, this is a good strategy that I use in MMA a lot, where you can throw, 3 or 4 of the fighters in there that you like and, sit back, have a couple beers, watch the card, and hopefully get most of them to win and pay for the pay-per-view, which we got to pay for.
Yeah, which is always the goal, right?
Yeah,
and you know
that's
what?
it.
We obviously didn't plan this, Benny, but what you were just talking about is a perfect transition into our Spanish bets. We're going to bet some La Liga this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously these are FA Cup. If you go to your book and look under England, it won't be English Premier League. It'll be FA Cup, so look for those specifically. But we got some Espanyol, some La Liga action in Spain.
Yep.
And Real Madrid is a bet that I like. I also like the under in that game, but they're both juiced. And so what I did was look through the entire gamut of opportunities to pick bets for this game. I actually like Real Madrid to keep a clean sheet at plus 150. Okay. So here's my reasoning. Number one, Eibar can't score. So that's a huge piece of it, but they're also doing a decent job keeping the score down at home. They're only conceding 0.78 goals per game there. So what I'm hedging against, in essence, is a fluky Eibar goal. Or a Getafe goal. Excuse me, Getafe. A fluky Getafe goal. If they get a PK, if they score early and then decide to bunker, Real Madrid's going to have to score 2 goals here.
Mm-hmm.
They certainly could. They have the ability to, but on the road themselves are keeping, most of the teams down to a goal or a clean sheet themselves. I think it's like 0.67 goals conceded per game there. So while I like Real Madrid to win, they are on the road. We could see a fluky goal. We've been totally screwed out of that. I feel like for the last 2 months consistently where these crappy teams, score some fluky goal, and then all of a sudden our win is now gone, and now it's a draw, and now we lost our unit, and I'm sick of that. Yep. So here's an opportunity where I like a team at minus 150 or minus 115, but their most likely path to victory is to keep the clean sheet. A 1-0 or a 2-0 win seems most likely. I don't want to necessarily choose that score and take that grouping for, the outcome.
Right.
They keep the clean sheet, they're going to get the win. We have a win in our parlay, which we'll talk about later. So I can get it at plus 150 for them to keep the clean sheet against Getafe, who's a decent side, but can't really score themselves at home. That's where I'm looking to attack this game.
Yeah, and you were saying we're like bunkering down and all that. Is that kind of the way they've been playing at home? Is that why we see them not giving up a lot of goals, but also not scoring a lot?
Well, it's just kind of Hetafe's way, right? I mean, when I saw the line initially, I was like, this is kind of curious. Why aren't Madrid bigger favorites? But you start digging in, Getafe is not a bad side, right? They're not a side that does bunker. They try to play a little bit and are sitting in a decent spot in the table. So the line is about where it needs to be. That's why there wasn't a ton of value on that Real Madrid side. But I mean, against the top four, here's the other thing, though, that I liked. Because Getafe does have a decent home record, decent record in general. But against the top four, Getafe's played 3 teams they're yet to score as well. So against Atletico Madrid, against Barcelona, and I believe Sevilla, they lost 2-0, 2-0, and 1-0. So once again, more towards the top sides are trying to keep the game close, haven't been able to break through with the goal themselves. So I like Real Madrid to win. It's only minus 115, I think, if you want to take that as well. I'm going to chuck that into a parlay later, kind of a 4-team fun parlay that we're going to throw around.
Yeah, and this is something that a lot of teams do in a lot of different sports. When you're the inferior side on talent, you want to kind of slow a game down, whether it's football, whether it's soccer, whether it's basketball. And that's kind of what we're talking about here is they want to slow the game down. They want to hunker down. They want to play defense, and they want to, hope that they can get some kind of counter and get a cheap goal that way, which is not something that they've been able to do against the top sides, as Duke was saying, which is why he likes them for the shutout. So I'm on board with that. Anytime we can get a little bit better than even money, it's always a good thing there. Did you have any other bets for La Liga this weekend?
I do. I like Valencia as well. I don't want to, spend too much time breaking it down, but Valencia minus 155 at home to me is a decent opportunity to eat that juice there. Yet to lose at home, good defensively. This is where the Eibar team I was talking about literally cannot score. So I'm tempted to grab both teams to score no, but I think it's minus 110, something like that. But I just like Valencia to win. Whether it's 2-1, more than likely 1-0, 2-0. Valencia gets the W here at home.
What's the total goals in that game? Is that one we can look at the under?
It's 2.5 with juice on the under, I believe. Let me grab that real quick.
That would make sense based on what you're saying.
Minus 105 on the under, minus 115 on the over.
Okay. So what do you think about the under in that one too?
Again, not a bad option there, but I don't want to grab 2 juiced plays from this game.
Yeah.
So and
again, this goes back to what we were talking about with Frank. You just think the side is the better way to play it of the two things there, even though the under is also something you could look at. You'd rather just play the side. That makes more sense to you.
Yep, I think that is more likely to happen. Once again, fluky goals seem to be popping in, fixture congestion going through this holiday period. So I'm just grabbing the side here with Valencia.
Okay. Now, again, we got 2 bets in for La Liga. Is that all, or you got another one here for me?
We do. That's the 2 straight bets, and then we'll have also a 4-team parlay here as well. So we'll grab the 2 teams you just talked about, Valencia and Real Madrid, and then 2 other relatively big favorites, Atletico Madrid and Barcelona to win as well. I know Barcelona is away. I believe Atletico is as well. Or Atletico's at home, excuse me. But minus 360, again, we're not attacking that from a side perspective. Minus 1.5, Atletico can score multiple goals, but I'm less confident about them doing it than any other team in this 4-team parlay. And then Barcelona's Barcelona. Espanyol's been this year, minus 220 on the road. Again, something I don't necessarily want to attack from just a straight bet perspective, but is a good add-in to juice the odds on a 4-team parlay. And with those 4 teams, Madrid, Valencia, Atletico, and Barca, we're getting 4.61 to our 1-unit bet. So just a 1-unit bet, and that's 460.
Now, those are 3-way lines we're talking here? Or
those are 3-way lines. Yep, 3-way lines.
So, again, for those of you who don't bet soccer often, you could bet on Team A to win, Team B to win, or the game to be a draw. That's what a 3-way line is. Some books also offer something called the draw no bet, where you bet one side or you bet the other, and if the game ends in a tie, you get your money back. Now, again, the drawback to that is that you also get less of a return on the win than you do when you bet them to win straight up, which is why when Duke said it, I asked them. This way, when people go and they put that same thing in and they're using a draw no bet and they're only getting 2-1 and they're like, you told me it was 4-1. What's going on here? Yeah. So, if you go to the win, you can get 4-1 on that. If you, are a little worried about it and you want to go to the draw, the draw no bets and drop down a little bit, it's going to take a little bit off of your upside. So like we always talk about, it comes down to the question of risk versus reward. Again, we're taking basically the best teams in the in La Liga, which is some of the ones that Duke is talking about here. We're parlaying them all together. So this is one of those situations where I would not be looking at the draw no bet. I'm going for the big money. I'm going for the the win on the three-way line and the higher juice, because it would be like if, the Yankees lost to the, I don't know, whoever the worst team in the league. It'd be like –
It's not even – no, but it's not the same. Here's why, Benny.
Good.
So these are all European sports
Mhm.
in general, but especially soccer. They play everyone twice. That is their entire schedule. They don't have a playoff. And so every game matters. So when you think about – the Yankees on, the backside of a 10-day road trip or something like that, they may just punt the game. They give up a couple runs in the first inning. You're thinking, well, this is over.
Yep.
It's not like that because they only have 38 games. And so every single game is important. They may rotate their team and maybe, play against the lesser side, some youth and things like that. The result matters. I mean, at the end of the year, if they're in first, second, third, that game in August is just as important as the last game of the season.
Yeah, and especially the way they do things in Europe. That's the difference between going and playing in the Champions League at the, the top of your sport, or ending up in the, Europa League beating up on the second-tier teams from, all the other leagues.
Yeah, playing on Thursday nights, traveling 6,000 miles to Kazakhstan to play somebody in -4 degrees. Yeah, no thanks.
I didn't even know that was a real place until you just said that. I thought it was just something from a Borat video.
It's a real place. It's a real place.
All right, so anything else you want to add to the guys before we sign off here?
I don't know that there is. Certainly we'll be back next week with EPL action. Champions League isn't back until, I believe, next month. So we'll be hitting that EPL hard. Any opportunities that pop up, obviously I'll put in the bet pack. If you have questions about anything I've put on the bet pack, certainly you can hit me up on Twitter at DukeDFS. Had a lot of guys in there today asking questions about the round robin. So glad we can jump on and talk about that here, Benny.
Yeah, no, that's good. I wanted to be able to explain that because, a couple people, like you said, had asked you about it. So I said to you, why don't we talk about it on air and, kind of give everybody the breakdown on it. Again, very good strategy that you guys can use for MMA as well. It's something I've been doing with a lot of the picks that Mad Lab throws in. If you want to have a lot of fun and you want to get crazy with it all, you can go and take it, match by match from what Mad Lab picks in the MMA article and wind up with like a 10-team round robin. I got to be honest, though, it gets a little crazy because you wind up laying out like a couple $100 because when you have 8 or 9 teams that you're putting in it, the number of combinations just gets a little ridiculous. Yeah, and you could wind up with a much bigger bet than you thought you were going to have at the beginning. And, again, you cash a bunch of them, you lose a couple of them. On one of those days, I actually had a day where I had like 7 or 8 of them in there, and it was one of the days where Mad Lab swept the card. And again, I only did it for like $1 or $2 because it was like 170 different bets.
Yeah.
But that 170 wound up paying like $2,000 or something like that. So you can still get big scores by doing a bunch of dollar bets in a round robin like this, because theoretically you have like 150, 170 bets when you have that many teams in it.
It can get out of control. I'll tell you a quick story. Back when I was college, a little tuned up, had a couple soda pops, and thought I'd entered a 0.5 unit, like 17 round robin. And I forgot the decimal point. So I did 5 units on each bet for like $600 and some and hit submit and then looked at my account. I was like, what? And then tried to call, I think it was Bovada I was with at the time. They were like, yeah, good luck. What do you want me to do?
Yeah. How did it work out? You can't leave hanging on a story.
No,
was it a good one or no?
It was not a good one. No, I think like 5 of the 7 lost. So I lost my ass. I hit like a couple small 2-team parlays, but the rest, and it was all ways. So it was a brutal lesson. A mistake I won't make again.
Yeah, but like I said, the round robin is definitely a cool betting strategy. It's something a lot of people I know do on NFL weekends as well, where they'll pick 6 or 7, like those people who play the pools where you pick every team against the spread or something, they'll put all their bets in there on like $1 one, comes out to like $100, $150. They play it a bunch of different ways. And, I've seen people have some big weeks like that. So like I said, you can make money doing this. The upside is a little bit less than if you would have parlayed everything, but the downside is also a little bit less if you would parlay everything. So that's the idea between it. You're kind of managing your risk versus reward in this situation.
Yeah, for me, it's just kind of hedgy action, right? Some days I wake up, I want to bet the board, but either, bankroll or I can't sit in front of a TV and watch every game, so I'm following on my phone, something like that. It's just a way to grab action, and it's also a way to kind of gauge where you're at. If you were to bet every single game without a huge outlay, and you got to have something on it, right? You don't want to just have a spreadsheet with your picks, so something fun.
We don't do the work to not bet on it. That's not the idea behind this. If you're gonna go through all the research, you're doing the research to try to find that edge and take advantage of it. So that's the idea here.
So one last thing, you did mention you could lessen your odds with draw no bet. That's something that Tommy G does quite a bit with bets that I put in. I'm worried about value, units overall. I don't love to risk a ton of units to win a small bet. Tommy loves grabbing most of my plays, going to a draw no bet, or if it's a -1.5, something like that, taking them on the three-way line and then parlaying several of my bets together. So that's an opportunity there that you can do. I don't necessarily do, but he wins quite often with that strategy. So
yeah, and again, it all comes down to personal preference and bankroll and things like that on how you want to go about doing it. Some people are just looking to make a score, and if you're looking to make the big score, stay away from the draw no bets and go with the straight wins. If you're looking to kind of preserve capital and you're running some kind of system, maybe it does make a little more sense to go with the the draw no bets and take the lower odds, the lower payouts there, but also the better chance that you're not going to lose your money and you're going to get the return of your capital back. So again, there's a million different ways to make money sports betting. The idea though is you got to do what's comfortable for you, stick to a system that makes sense to you. Don't just throw bets in willy-nilly, and definitely make sure you're signing up over at www.elitesportsbetting.com. This way you're going to get the sides that have the best edges on it. Because one way or another, if you're betting on good teams, you're going to wind up making money. If you're putting your money in bad situations, you're not. And for that, we'll leave it there. We'll sign off. He's Duke. I'm Benny. And this has been The Opening Line.